Hey everyone, it's Mr. G, and in this video I'm going to show you a simple Scratch project that I created, and I'm going to show you how to reverse engineer it so you can rebuild it from scratch. And I know that I said it's a simple project, but you're going to see just how complicated even a simple project can get. So what we're going to try to reverse engineer is a simple attendance app. So this is something that a teacher could use in their classroom, for example, to take attendance of their students. When I say reverse engineer, what I mean is that we're going to look at the different pieces of the project and break it down into chunks. And then we're going to try to figure out how I built each of those pieces. So let's look at the project right now. On the main screen, we see that it's an attendance app. That's the title of this screen. And we could see three students, this cat, this girl, and this other girl on the right. So it looks like while the student is in class, there's a green box outlining that student. And if the teacher presses on the student, that box turns red, indicating that that student is absent. Now, one thing I'm just thinking about right now is that I created this without considering that someone might be red-green colorblind. So those accessibility issues are things that you have to consider when you're making a project. And I didn't consider it when I first made this just as quickly as I could. In the future, we might want to change the colors to maybe blue and yellow or something else. Anyways, continuing on, once the teacher marks down who is absent or who is present, they can click on See List, and then they get a list of the attendance for the class. So they could easily see that the cat is absent, Abby's absent, and Cassie's present. Then they can go back to the main screen by clicking Go Back, where we could continue our attendance, maybe everyone's present, and if we click See List now, everyone should be present. So there are two views. There's this view for the main app where you could see all of the students, so you could see the student list, and then there's another view where you could see the attendance list. There are buttons that allow us to switch between the views, so either we see the See List button or the Go Back button. And there are three sprites that each represent a student. And from experience, I'm pretty sure that what I did was change the costume whenever the sprite is clicked. So I could already start thinking about how this was made. So there are two costumes per sprite or student, one with the green border around it and one with the red one. We're also going to need a way to store the current attendance value for each student, whether they're absent or present. So we need a way of storing that data, and to do that, we're going to use variables. So for each student, we could have a different variable, and then we could store either absent or present in that variable. And then what we can do is we can take the values of all of these variables for each student, and we could store them inside of one data structure known as a list. And the way to think about a list is that it's like an ice tray, or it's an ice tray that you can keep adding more ice cubes to. And inside each little box, we can place the value of one of the variables. And then later on, we could retrieve that data by saying, okay, in space 1 or in position 1, what is the current value of that variable? Or we can add more data to that list. So we can say, okay, add this variable to the end of this list. We could also change them later on, delete them. We could do all sorts of different things with lists. The difference between a list and an ice tray is that in an ice tray, there might be only like 6 or 12 ice cubes or spaces available, whereas in a computer list, we can store thousands or millions or even billions of different values. But I hope that this little analogy kind of gets the point across of how we can use lists to store this data. And then what we can do is when we click on See List, we can retrieve the values inside all of the different spaces, and then we can present that to the user so that the teacher can easily read who's absent and who's present. Alright, and now that we've seen the features of the app, we can start building it. So the first thing I want to build is the two views. We have the attendance app, like main screen with the students on it, and then if the user or teacher clicks on See List, then they get a list view of all the students that were present or absent, and then they can click Go Back to the first view. Once we build the two views, I want to create a button that can switch between these two views. And when it's on one specific screen, it'll say Go Back, and when it's on the other, it'll say See List. So we have to make sure that we create two costumes in order to do that. We could create two separate buttons, but I think one button is fine, and then we just change the costumes to show something different. Although I have three sprites in this finished app, I don't want to actually make them all at the same time. I just want to get one of them working perfectly with the correct functionality, so when you click on it, it switches costumes and changes the value of its variable, and then I'll recreate or copy that functionality into more sprites, depending on which students are in the class. When the app is first started, we want every student to be present because that's just good user experience. We don't want the teacher to have to mark down that every student is present, pretty much we want to start off with present being the default value, and if the student happens to be absent, then the teacher can click on that sprite, mark them as absent, and then see the list after that. We also have to figure out the functionality for creating the list and placing students inside of that list. I think this is a good plan to start with, so in the next video we're going to start by creating the two views with a button that switches between the two. Now there's one last thing I want to mention if you're going to follow along and recreate this project with me. I would suggest that you make it your own. Make sure that you have your students, or have different numbers of students, or have different costumes for each of the students. Maybe use your friends' faces and your face as the students. Have a different way of doing things, so that way you could say that this is your own. Maybe it was inspired by my attendance app, but at the end of the day, it is your creation. I just want you to have an app that is yours, that you could be proud of showing off, and not saying that it's an exact replica or copy of what I created. See you in the next video.